world. Welcome to Voices in Leadership, the Leading Age Virginia podcast. I'm Melissa Andrews, President and CEO, and your host. I don't know where this episode's going to take us because I'm joined by two of my closest friends in the whole world, my sisters from other misters, Sharon Sullivan and Mary Kemper. I can say I've never introduced anybody like that in my entire time recording this podcast. I am super excited because this episode really proves the statement that lines blur between professional and personal lives. I think particularly in the field of aging services. So Mary and Sharon, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to start with you, Sharon, because I have known you the longest. If you just share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and just anything you want to tell them.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm Sharon Sullivan, as Melissa said, and I work with at LeadingAge, and I'm the VP of conferences and brand experience. I've been at LeadingAge this coming June. It's going to be 30 years. I've held a variety of jobs there, always conferences, but I've oversaw education. I had a little stint in marketing, exhibit sales, and sponsorship. And now I have this unique role of I'm in what we call brand experience. And in that role, I oversee all of our face-to-face events and some of our larger virtual events. And I also consult with a lot of our state associations to help them do brand experiences for their events and to sort of share best practices across all the affiliates. Like Melissa and I have the opportunity, besides meeting her at LeadingAge a very long time ago, I get to help LeadingAge Virginia, and that's super rewarding part of my job. So
I don't know that you should say you get to help us. We're lucky that you help us. You make us look good. Mary Kemper, why don't you tell our listeners?
Hi, Mary Kemper, President and CEO of the United Methodist Association of Health and Welfare Ministries, or otherwise known as UMA. We are based in Maryland, and we're a national association. We have about 70 corporate members that own and operate around 450 sites around the country. And what's unique about UMA is about half of our members serve seniors, and about the other half serve children, youth, and families. And I've been in my role since the fall of 2016. Prior to that, as you all know, I was at LeadingAge, and we continue to partner with LeadingAge in lots of ways. In fact, I was there last week at the LeadingAge offices, so happy to be here.
Okay, so let's go in the Wayback Machine. So, all right, I am at LeadingAge Virginia, formerly known as Van Ha. Start with you, Kemper. Where were you in way back when?
Okay, so I was at Van Ha in the early 90s. It was my first association job. And I had been in journalism, and I'd been a state political reporter for a chain of weekly newspapers in Northern Virginia. But a very close friend of mine from college was a gerontology major. And she was very close with her grandmother and went to school for gerontology, and called me up one day and said, I'm about to turn down this job I think you'd be perfect for. And that was it. I was interviewed by Sandy Levin. It was Sandy and myself. And so the two of us did everything. But what a great way to learn a lot about associations. We did a lot of political advocacy. And I always remember that we would go down to the General Assembly, come back, type up the newspaper, print it off, fold it up, put the mail things on, the stamps on it, and race off to the post office. So, that kind of dovetails to the fact that at LeadingAge, we would help the state associations. And I would always say, you have no idea what they are doing and how much they're doing. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So I started at Van Ha in the early 90s. And I think, Melissa, when you started there, you sent me some pictures of me with permed hair and really big shoulder pads.
Yeah, when we were getting together for our
and really heavy
photos. Yeah,
really.
we were going through photos for our 50th anniversary last year. We came across some Kemper photos. So just for our listeners, Leading Age Virginia has had, and VanHa, we have had 4 CEOs in our 50 years. One was an interim, so I don't know that that really counts. But Sandy Levin was our second, and she was here for 27 years. And so, okay, so Mary, then all right, so Sharon, you've been with Leading Age, formerly ASA, for 30 years. So talk about how did you end up there, and then we'll connect the dots, because then I think at some point
94.
you guys interfaced, and then Sharon, you're the reason I ended up at ASA. So like we got to figure out
Yeah,
how
through
this
that
all,
connection.
yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes back
So
to 94, I think.
yeah, I came in. When did you come, Mary?
Thanks.
Were we on the
We were best friends in 94.
Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
when you
we
went
were
to
in the
ASA?
We were
they
in
used
the same class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
breakfast with the president. We met at breakfast with the president when Sheldon used to have them, remember?
did. But you go, and then I'll share how I got there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was working at a fine jewelry magazine at the time, and it was in Philadelphia, and I was engaged to a United States Marine who was getting transferred to Washington, D.C., and I had to find a job. I was working for a magazine. I was doing their trade show and event. It was called the JCK Show. And so it's kind of a funny story in the fact that I didn't even know what an association was. I never heard of an association. And so back then there was no Indeed or, any kind of job board. So to get a job in Washington, I used to get the Sunday Washington Post, and it would take me a couple days to get it. So I would get it on Tuesday. And if I thought a job was really perfect for me, I would FedEx my resume to the hiring manager. And so I did that with the then ASA job. It was conference services manager or something like that. And so I FedEx my resume. And I heard later that my resume came with that FedEx package, hit her desk, and she opened it up. It made her open it. So it's still very good advice for getting a job, by the way. And she brought it down to the hiring manager there. Her name was Allison Owing. She was the director of meetings. And I got an interview, and I was sitting in my interview, and she was kind of running around. And there was an exhibit outside that they were kind of testing and they were putting up as I was sitting in the chair waiting for Allison. And it was the International Association of Homes and Services for the Aging. And aging on the board was spelled AGEING. And I thought to myself, should I tell them that they spelled aging wrong? Would that be a good career move right now? And so I decided, which is very indicative of my personality, I decided to say something, and I struck up a conversation with the person, and I ended up getting the job anyway. So I did get the job. And so, yeah, and that was like in 94. And actually, this is a kind of interesting story too. In the interview was in, I don't know, end of May. And my annual meeting for JCK, my big show, was like June 4th or something like that. And the interviewer, Allison, said, if I told you that I would not give you the job unless you came before then, that you had to not go to that, you're gonna have to tell or you wouldn't get the job. Would that be a deal breaker? And I said, and my answer to her was, yeah, that would be a deal breaker, because I wouldn't want to do that to you. And I don't think I would want to work for an organization who would want me to do that to somebody else. And she said, you got the job, because that is the answer that I wanted. So it's kind of a trick question. But yeah. So that's how I got there.
You started and you got married.
Yeah. I got married. So when I looked at the annual meeting dates, I knew that I was going to have to move my honeymoon because it was over my honeymoon, but I so wanted to work there that I did that. And then I didn't actually realize that I'd be away for my anniversary every year for the next 30 years, that my husband, I never spent my anniversary with my husband, but we somehow have gotten around that. But yeah, so I like literally did the annual meeting, got married, then put my honeymoon off, and then, got married, did the annual meeting, then did my honeymoon after the annual meeting, which I slept most of the time, actually.
I don't understand. Dennis didn't want to make the annual meeting your honeymoon.
I
And
know. Yeah.
we're not, this year isn't going to be your 30th wedding anniversary in Nashville?
Exactly.
Like,
It should.
that sounds romantic.
Yeah.
You never,
I never forget my anniversary for that reason.
that's true. We often have celebrated your anniversary with you.
That's right.
All right. So Mary, what took you to then ASA?
So yeah, so I was dating a journalist. I met him at the Virginia General Assembly, and no, actually at that point we were married, 93, married in 93, and he was transferred up to DC. And so connected with ASA at the time and became their public relations specialist. So it
So
was
you
my,
went straight from Van Ha to ASA.
I did.
Yeah.
I
So you already
did.
knew that.
So within 2 weeks, I was working at ASA, and yeah, so that's where I met Sharon. It's really hard for me to believe it's been 30 years because I remember the whole honeymoon thing like it was yesterday. But yeah, so I was at so started in 94 in the communications division. At that point, we didn't have, it's really going to date us. We didn't have email. And so we would talk about when to use a fax, when to walk down the hall, and when to schedule a phone call with people. And we kind of, we still kind of have those debates around, what's appropriate for email and other things, right? So, and then I was recruited to the Continuing Care Accreditation Commission, which was in the same building under ASA at the time, and I was their communications, I think communications specialist at that point too.
That's
And
a
then
really wonderful thing about LeadingAge, because when you think about it, for us, relatively, I mean, we're a nice size organization, but when you think about corporations or whatever and how big they can be, like most people have this very diverse story of how much they've moved around in the organization and grew their careers, which is really a testament to, what I mean, to the age. I
yeah,
mean, you just look at, the three of us, like
three
how
of
many
us.
different jobs we've had connected to LeadingAge is crazy.
Yeah, I always said they wanted me on the bus. They just didn't know what seat they wanted me in. And so Mary, then you left and you moved to Chicago, and
Yes.
then you came back.
Yes, I'm one of many boomerangers at LeadingAge. So I was moved to Chicago. I was pregnant with my second child and was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years. And then we were transferred back to the DC area. And I got a call from Sharon. Hey, it's Sharon and Bob Lagoida. And they were interested in wanting to know, well, no, actually, there was one more chapter. I did some freelance writing for LeadingAge around trustee articles. So I would do the research and write articles on trustees. And then I got the call from Sharon and Bob, had lunch with both of them. I didn't know Bob Lagoda at the time, so that seems ages ago too. And it was a great opportunity for me. It was 15 hours a week, part-time, temporary, anytime I wanted to come. And then it became 15 hours, then it became 20 hours, then it came, you've been here so long, you can no longer be temporary. And once my daughter, at that point, I had three kids, and my daughter turned 4. I'm sorry, once she went to kindergarten, they hired me full time. So,
And she's 24 today.
24, yeah, this week, yeah.
This week. So, and then I started my career at the Hebrew Home for the Aged at Riverdale, which was a founder of AHA. And when I wanted to move back to DC in 2002, the curator that I worked for there, Susan Putterman, who knew Sharon, because they did the art collection at the building together, said, you need to meet Sharon Sullivan. And I called Sharon in 2001 and had an informational interview with you. And we spent 2 hours together and we hugged at the end. And you said, there are 2 positions open. Which one do you want? Not that you were hiring. And I ended up starting as a marketing coordinator.
Right.
And yeah, I had 7 positions in 14 years, like just got all kinds of experience, and here now 7 years later. So gosh, 21 years. Oh my God. I started in 2002. It's 2024.
You started our corporate sponsorship program.
Yeah.
Like that still exists today, and it's such a big part of our health and well-being.
Crazy.
financially as an organization and intellectually. And you, that
You
I
also
remember you doing
oversaw
that.
the philanthropy network at one point, and then I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Cheeseburger, 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 Kemper. This is a story for another day. All right. I hope our listeners are still listening after we've just given our whole history.
I know. This
but,
might
all
not
right.
be interesting to anybody but us, I'm thinking.
Well, I know. I think it's interesting because I love how we all intersect. But I think one of the interesting things is, I mean, Sharon, 30 years. And I mean, let's not forget the name change and how integral, Sharon, you were to the rebranding rebranding, just reintroduction when ASA became Leading Age. But I want to just spend a little bit of, so I want to talk about two things. One, I want to just talk about each of your philosophies around leadership and particularly around being women in leadership. And, I think one of the things that I really learned being at Leading Age National, particularly working for Mary Riley, I think I'll never forget when I became a regional vice president. I'm sitting across the table from her in Tennessee. And I said to her, hey, just, on Friday when I get home, I got a doctor's appointment. And she went like this. And she like held up her hand and she was like, doctors, hair, nails, family, pets, like you got to feel good. You got to look good. And you need to know the people around you, people and pets around you are taken care of to do this job because we work hard. We work different hours. Like I don't even know that you're at a doctor's appointment. I trust that you're getting the work done. And so it really reinforced to me that like I mattered as a person, right? First, before being an employee. And I feel like that culture, I've taken that with me, right, into my management style, into my leadership style. So just asking you, like, so what's your leadership style? What's your approach to leadership? And then also, how have you managed being a working mother, wife, all those roles that you have? And how has that influenced your leadership style and your management style?
A lot to unpack there.
I know, I'm sorry. It was a very convoluted question. Nothing's ever easy with me. You know that.
Well, do you want me to say, or do you want to?
Yes, please. And I'll build with whatever.
I would say, that I never forget what it's like. Like I remember instinctively, like how I felt when I was climbing the ladder and how I felt when I was in different leadership positions. And I remember that. And I've been so blessed to have amazing mentors in my life, both people I reported to and people like Ann Gillespie that were my sort of colleagues, different people in my life. And I take little lessons from all of them. But one of them, I can't remember who it was, whether it was Ann or Larry Minix or Katie or whoever, but somebody taught me, like do a gap analysis of your skills, your skills and talents, and then hire people way smarter than you and then get out of the way. And I really learned that there is a difference between delegating and giving people ownership, because when we were sort of climbing the ladder, we all wanted to own our projects, right? And I think that when you have to, especially when you were in a certain position and now you're supervising that position, it's really hard to accept the fact that that person's not going to do it the way you would do it. It's going to look very different. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's different. So you need to like sort of embrace that it's going to be different, it's going to be done differently. But yeah, so I would say I really, that's a big part of what I do. I really think about ownership versus delegation and then coaching moments versus like, let whatever's going to happen and then kind of use it as a teaching moment moving forward. And then I would say my other thing is the whole just telling people what they want to know, which I feel like because they have that sense of ownership, they have to understand a lot broader around the fringes of the why they're doing something. So they're not on the need to know basis, and Katie like really super lives this all the time. Like you understand the big vision of what we're trying to do, no matter what level you are in the organization. And they're much more likely to have buy-in if they understand the why and the sort of, what you're ultimately trying to do. And they'll do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they understand the bigger picture. So I would say I mean, they're kind of the highlights. And then Kemper, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, because the other questions are, we can go later, but.
Yeah, I think you've been doing that a lot longer than me, and I think I'm still a bit stretched to let go of some things, but we're a much smaller team, so there are 4 of us full time. And so I have learned to say all 4 of us can't be in the room doing this. So and as part of that, we need to be efficient with our time. And so I have to let go because it's just not efficient. I would say a lot of what you said, and also, and you do this well, Sharon and Melissa, is just bringing it back to the mission, the why, as you said, like explain to people why we do things, and bringing that energy behind the mission. I think the 3 of us see where it's going, and if you're a new team member, or if you're the bookkeeper or something, you might not always see, well, why are we doing this? And so the more we can connect our teams to the impact that they have and the association has on the broader membership is valuable.
Yeah. You're not a leader because you're a subject matter expert on everything, right? You're a leader because you understand the big picture and you can coach people. And so don't be afraid to say, I don't know. And don't be afraid to say to somebody on your team, like, teach me that. Like, tell me what you're doing, teach me. And I feel like I was lucky enough to be around most of my supervisors over my lifetime had that attitude. I had one person that sort of like was afraid to say he didn't know something. And I think I learned as much actually about leadership from somebody who was absolutely awful, the worst leader ever. I learned a really lot about leadership from that person because I learned what not to do. But one of the big things I've noticed is that like, you have to be, you can't pretend you know everything. You can't be afraid to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say to somebody, I mean, you both are CEOs, so you're doing this to your board chair, but it's like, I don't know the answer to that, but so-and-so does. And I will find that out. Like, don't feel like you have to have the answer to leadership all the time. Like, if they expect you to like know everything, that's crazy. You're in the wrong position. You know what I mean? That's unrealistic expectation. And like to
And
Mary, like that's not a
yeah,
good
and
use of your time.
similarly, if you make a mistake, right? So I do try, and I make plenty of mistakes, is to say that was,
Yeah.
modeling, that was my mistake. But let's move on. People make mistakes, and sort of setting that example. But I think if
Accountability. Yeah, totally.
trying new things and you're stretching yourself, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of time on culture. We did an inclusion survey with a consultant, and I will say, lesson learned, I was spending so much time on the road. I was really losing sight of the need for connection amongst and between the team and how integral I am. I'm an integral part of that. And we had lost kind of that routine team meeting. And so we set a format for that, and we rotate who facilitates it every month. And so we have a set agenda, and now we're coming up with norms, but it is so interesting to see, I mean, just how seriously the team members approach the agenda, way more than I did. I feel kind of bad. And they raise the bar each month. Like, there's a DEI moment every month, and then there's like a getting to know each other segment, and like what they're bringing in terms of interaction and just fun and seriousness and intentionality. And it's really striking, and I'm learning so much from them. And it's quite humbling, really, honestly, because I think I'll speak just for myself. I forgot how important intentionality around culture was because I was so busy going to the next thing and thinking
You're
about
right.
strategic initiatives and revenue and all of that stuff. But that culture piece is a really, really crucial part for success too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, relationships matter, right?
Yeah.
The 3 of us are testament that relationships matter, relationships among staff matter. Like, people work harder and work better with people they like and know and understand. And that is super important, right? To have, organizations can get too busy and sort of forget that, like get right to make it all about work. But the truth is we're we're holistic human beings, and, yeah, that's super important. I completely agree. And that's awesome. You're doing that. That's really great.
And I do think the pandemic, disrupted all of that. And so we are all still trying to do a reset with our teams, with our friendships, and yes, trying to keep those connections and take time for them. Because you sort of with different parts of your life and your career, you kind of lose that rhythm, and it's so important to kind of have those touch points.
Yeah. So how do you manage all the different roles that you have? Daughter, mother, sister, wife, aunt, employee, like all of it. How do you do it and still look so darn good? You know what I'm sitting here thinking? This is how deep I am. I was sitting here looking at, of course I'm looking at our hair, and I was thinking at one, like we're like Charlie's Angels right now once again, but at one point you guys were reversed and I was a blonde at one point. Like I love how our hair colors, we could just.
We should have a thing where we just show all the life of our hair color, like have a little collage. That would be really super funny. Like, I would say we're all really blessed to work for organizations where, that they see the whole person and they understand that we are caregivers all in one way or another, whether it's a parent or a sibling or, your pet or your child or, so I'm super blessed. And I've been remote since 2011. So I was kind of one of the pioneers. I wasn't the pioneer for LeadingAge. Margaret Wonka Daniels was the pioneer, but
I don't know. Was Leslie Knight was the pioneer?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess yes, technically, yes.
Technically.
Yeah, yes, that is absolutely true. And she would be so mad at me for not saying that.
So good thing I did.
Good thing
Leslie.
you did.
And she was there 40 years, right?
No, she was into 40s, like 40.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when she retired
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do not plan to beat her, by the way. But if I have anything to say about it,
we won't let you.
Yeah, so we're totally blessed for that reason. And I think that one of the ways that I do it is that I kind of don't separate it all. Like I work for an organization who we're goal focused, right? We're not making widgets from 8 o'clock in the morning to with at one point, whatever hours for lunch and whatever. So it could be something something could happen at 8 o'clock at night and I'm dealing with it. But at the same time, LeadingAge understands when I have something that I need to do. I mean, I remember that I used to be taking my lunch at 3:30 because that's when my kids came home from school. And you know what I mean? So I think that you just, when you have a culture where you're goal oriented, you just have the freedom and the latitude to be able to do that. And so suddenly you're squeezing everything in 8 hours a day feels just a little easier. And then I think the other big thing is, having a village, having a support system, friends, other women or other people who understand, having a rich network, spending the time in the relationships to do that, investing in the relationships. But oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do without my village, at all different periods of my life. And now I have 2 elder parents and a retirement community. My kids are older, but just I feel like needy in a different way, needing me in a different way, but as intense. So yeah, my village has changed over the years, but and my sports system, but it's really important.
Yeah. How about you, Mary?
Yeah, I don't even know the answer to that. I feel like I've always been juggling and work. I always enjoyed the work and the variety of work. And I also think that, being a parent and having family makes you good at the work you do because you're again connecting to and it wasn't this way when we started in 94 at LeadingAge or even before at Van Hove and LeadingAge Virginia, but we're much closer to the experiences of aging parents and raising kids and the challenges related to workforce. So I think that we connect the dots with what we're doing every day. And I don't know that I've ever mastered it, but I really don't know that I've ever mastered it, but um,
I don't know
and
that
my
you
kids
can.
are older too, and this is the first season where I think, knock on wood, I'm an empty nester, at least for this month. So, we don't
Yeah.
have them when they need them. It's funny, it is a little bit of cats in the cradle where my kids, I'm now saying, who don't call very often.
It's switch. Oh yeah, it switched. You used to be like, stop calling me, and now you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like for my stepkids, it's like particularly my stepdaughter. If I text and she doesn't text right back, I'm like, I know you're holding the phone,
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly.
she
Yeah,
actually said to me once, like, if you really need me, call me. But but
that's
you don't
changed. I know. I thought I had the
understand.
formula with the texting, and then once I got that down, that I used to think, oh, okay, this is it. I don't call, I just text them.
Do you
And
know
then
what I got explained the other
like
day?
just when I got that switched to
Calling. What, Sharon?
So
Educate
my
us.
son had explained this to me because he's 23, and he has that setting on his phone that if he reads your text, it says read.
Yeah.
So I hear them say all the time, like, I can't believe they left me unread. They left me unread. I said, can you explain what that means? And he goes, it means that you read the text, but that you don't respond. I go, well, that's not unread. That's
Right.
unresponse. It's a bad, because I'm like, I know you read this. Like you read it, you're just not responding. Like, you know what I mean? So
So you
like,
know
anyway, so
how
I don't know if you guys knew that, but I just learned that unread.
I get the fastest response from Snapchats.
uh,
So my stepkids are 28 and 22, and they will respond to Snapchats. And so I'll have whole conversations via Snapchat, but through the like texting, but not through texting. I don't understand.
I'm impressed that you're this and you're not. I'm
Oh,
this.
oh, you are? You're
I
one
am.
finger.
Yeah, because I always have a big gigantic phone and sometimes my fingers don't fit.
Maybe you should talk. Maybe you should do talk to
I
text.
know, but then I gotta correct it because it says it doesn't understand my Philadelphia accent.
Oh my God. All
where are
right,
you
so
going with this?
I know we're so bad. We're so bad. Okay. So how oh my gosh, when Eliza ever has the phone, gosh, God help me, because who knows what the technology will be by then, right? I mean, she's 8 now. So, all right, Sharon, you mentioned around one good piece of career advice you got, which was surround yourself with people that'll fill the gaps. Is there another awesome piece of career advice that you have received? And then Mary, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of my favorite, the best one I had. I mean, I think the one of the best ones I ever got, and this sort of talks about not to be stereotypical about being a woman, but this was particularly, I feel like as a female, that was good advice, is that um, Len Fishman, who was president of LeadingAge for a little period of time, said, don't let them see you blink. And what he meant is like when you're in a sort of an important conversation, don't get emotional. Don't let them shake you. Don't let them see that they've impacted you. Keep your calm. Because as soon as you lose your calm,
Yep.
you lost the room. You lost, you like majorly took a step back.
Yep.
And I'm a super emotional person. So it is really, I'm a like Myers-Briggs like feeler, is one of my, so it's very hard for me to do that. Like I react. And so sort of that thing is like I hear him in my head sometimes saying, don't let him see you blink, don't let him see you blink.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. How about you, Mary?
I struggled with this question. I think and I can't quote anyone, but where I kept coming back to is be curious. And I say that just in so being curious has opened up so many doors for me in my career, um, and being open to trying new things. So I remember at LeadingAge, I was relatively new in the education division, which is, I believe, now the Knowledge Center, and they said, I need you to take the finance track. Nobody owns the finance track. Well, I didn't know a whole lot about the finance track, but it really opened up a lot of doors for me in terms of connecting with our business partners, developing relations with that. And then there's so many aspects of aging services that dovetail and are impacted by the financial piece. that really just opened up a whole new line of thinking for me. And I would say that's just one example of how many times it's like, be curious and be open to opportunities, because you don't know where they're going to lead. I mean, I think, you asked us about our career, and I think it's interesting for me that I was in journalism, and then I was in accreditation for a while. And it was Larry Minix who called me up and say, how would you like to be CEO of United Methodist Association, right? And what's interesting about UMA is that we have the Eagle Accreditation Program, which is the only faith-based accreditation program in the country, and have the connections with accreditation and the different aspects of this position. Everything I did before then was leading up to this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to say yes. And I had a really weird career journey too. Like I graduated in marketing. I had no interest in trade shows. I just happened to work for an ad agency who had this division that was, a trade show division. And that terrible leader I told you about, like I was like at my end with that person. And so I went to the other partner, ran the trade show division, and said, hey, can I work for you? And that's how I got into trade shows, which is what got me the LeadingAge job, so you kind of never know sort of your journey. So like lean in and say yes,
Yeah.
And I would say that goes back to our friendships as well, because when Larry Minix and others were, helping state associations, Melissa and I were recruited to help those state associations. So the three of us would go to the different states and help them out. And I learned so much from both of you through that process. I'm thinking about LeadingAge Maryland, LeadingAge Tennessee, and also some really fun times at those places. But a lot of detail about those different locations, and learned so much.
Mary Kemper used to coach the keynote speakers.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I learned that Kemper and I are not allowed to go coach keynote speakers.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the time that I didn't blink. And Melissa, when she met Robert Duvall, I've never heard her stutter, but she definitely did that time. And I was cool, calm, and collected. And she goes, I.
Were you cool, calm, and collected when Mitch Albom was about to get introduced and he was still on the plane, flying, and we were tracking his flight? Or how about Whoopi Goldberg? How about Whoopi Gate?
Wait, no. My favorite is Sidney Poitier, where he said he needed 20 minutes to get into the zone.
Yeah.
And we were driving through the parking lot, and you were saying, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And we walked, they pulled the car up in the back. He walks in, and they're playing his introductory video.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman's, yes.
You're on.
Yes.
You're on.
So
He was not very happy with us.
yeah.
It was the longest car ride into the parking lot.
You kept saying I'm coming up to the door, but you were in the wrong door. I'm like, where are you? And so we decided to use Morgan Freeman's video that he did of him. And at the end, which we couldn't cut off, said, ladies and gentlemen, Sidney Poitier. And we're like, oh my God, it's going to say that. And he is not going to be here. So he comes in with his little briefcase, his raincoat over his arm. I was like totally going to leave Dennis for this man. And he goes, I need a couple minutes with my teleprompter guy. And we said, and then I have to say, I don't pride myself on this reality. He goes, I can. I go, okay, let's walk you over. But then Morgan Freeman said, they put the microphone on and we're like, yes, we'll take you over to your teleprompter person. And then they said, ladies and gentlemen, Sidney Poitier. And we went, he basically guided him on stage, and he was so mad at us afterwards. Yeah. He loved Mary Kemper, but he did not like me afterwards. I took one for the team of LeadingAge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. I just remember standing next to Desmond Tutu when the commercials were playing for the expo, and all I hear is Desmond Tutu going, he's just giggling. He thought these commercials were hysterical. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm standing next to Desmond Tutu and he's giggling. Like, it was So surreal. Wow, we've had some really fun times.
Yes, and it's probably for another podcast, but I think one of the other more memorable keynote speakers, I wonder if Sharon remembers the Gail, working with Gail Sheehy. That was
Yes. Jogging in place in the green room.
okay. Yes. So that was
A powerful speaker for sure.
yes, and we did help her reframe her presentation. So
There
fun.
have been a few. There have been a few.
But working under pressure, I guess that's what we learned.
We have. So
Find your humor.
one, and if I know we're running out of time and we could go on and on and on, there's so many different threads and tendrils to our conversation, so many different directions. You both owe me dinner now.
Oh, we
Uh,
do.
um, I think one of the things, when I think about just how long we've been friends and colleagues, and one of the things that stands out the most to us, the most to me, is just how supportive we are to each other. We've been to each other, and you hear a lot in this day and age that women don't support women enough. And I can honestly say I would not be in where I am in my career or in my life without you two. But how do we continue to cultivate that, and how do we continue to model the importance of that, for our daughters, for our younger colleagues? Do we just do this, release this podcast?
Well, I will say that I credit both of you for where I am, thinking of me at different times and suggesting me and saying, who'd be good for that? And Mary Kemper. And so I think what I get from that moving forward is, I'm, we're not good. Women aren't always good about bragging about themselves, right? So they rely on their peers and their friends to advocate, to give them credit, to remind people, where that idea came from? That came from Sharon, that came from Melissa, because it's too often that people don't make those connections. So I think it's important for women to brag on each other, because we're not very good about doing it for ourselves.
Yeah, that is such a good answer. Like, shine the light on shine the light, you know. I think the most, because we remember what got us here, sort of modeling the behavior for our children. In fact, my daughter said to me, because I work at home and she is home over the summer and she hears a lot of my meetings and stuff, she'll comment on like that I help someone or whatever. So I try to model the behavior, but I think the most rewarding part of my job right now is paying it forward, is sort of spending time. So I always encourage my kids. I'm like, people will be so flattered if you call them up, reach out to them and ask them to have a cup of coffee with you. I never say no to that. Like somebody wants to do an informational interview, I'm just like, call them up and, kind of had this kind of conversation with them. And you never know where that's going to lead. And I think like making time for that, because we can be really busy, but making time for that. And and being intentional and having your daughters and other staff people see you invest in other people. There's a couple amazing employees in LeadingAge state associations who like just, oh, you need so and so, who you need to call that person. So yeah. How about you, Melissa? What do you think of that answer to that?
I think same. And I think the mentoring and, whether it's structured or unstructured is so, so important. And I think telling telling stories like our story,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gone to ASA if it wasn't for you, Sharon. And, I just think about, I agree with you, Mary, like I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. I mean, we're just so interconnected, and that interconnectedness is beautiful, and it's flawed, and it's not perfect. I think that's the other thing, is like the imperfections. We've had bumps along the way.
Well, and I think we've challenged each other along the way.
Yes.
That's made us stronger too. I mean, it's
Mhm.
not always easy, but I think you guys have given me some blunt advice on occasion, and it's not always easy to hear, but down the road, it's been helpful,
Yeah,
so
I
I
agree. Mhm.
being honest with each other, and looking out for each other. So yeah, No, I want to do this again soon. Like,
Yeah, having that circle that won't lie to you, that like you can,
Yes.
and having a circle that you can be your vulnerable self. And also like we all need to vent. So say, can I just vent? Can I just vent for a moment? Like get it out. Okay, you vented, now move on. Like, but I'm just saying having that circle you
Yep.
can be your raw self with, I think is really important. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for being that for me.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for
You've
getting
been
us
Thanks for
wonderful,
together.
asking us.
We need to
wonderful.
do more often.
I know, and with one. All right, podcast listeners, another fabulous episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we will stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you, Mary Kemper and Sharon Sullivan, for being.